I'm Simone, 29 years old, and I remember the crisp autumn air of New York City on my first day at Sterling & Finch, one of Manhattan's most prestigious advertising agencies. It was a dream come true, a culmination of years of relentless work and a deep-seated passion for creative storytelling. I had envisioned this moment countless times, picturing myself thriving in this dynamic environment. My portfolio had impressed them during the interviews, showcasing a unique blend of analytical thinking and groundbreaking design. I'd poured my heart into every campaign, every concept, believing that talent and dedication would always speak for themselves, regardless of where you came from or what you looked like. This was my chance to prove it on the biggest stage. The office itself was a marvel of modern design, sleek glass walls, open-plan workspaces buzzing with energy, and panoramic views of the city skyline. There was an undeniable pulse of innovation and ambition that permeated every floor. I felt a surge of excitement, a profound sense of belonging, ready to contribute my vision to this vibrant creative hub. My new team, led by a stern but seemingly fair creative director named Marcus, greeted me with polite smiles. They were a diverse group, at least on the surface, composed of individuals who had been with Sterling & Finch for years. I was the newest addition, the fresh perspective they had supposedly been seeking. As I settled into my desk, a subtle shift in the atmosphere began to register. The initial warmth seemed to cool, replaced by a professional distance that felt more like a barrier. Conversations would pause as I approached, only to resume in hushed tones once I passed by. It was nothing overt, just a quiet, almost imperceptible exclusion. During my orientation, I noticed how easily my colleagues interacted, their inside jokes and shared histories forming an invisible circle. I tried to join in, offering a friendly remark or a shared laugh, but my attempts often met with brief, polite responses before the conversation flowed around me once more. It was like watching a play from behind a glass wall. I attributed it to being the newbie, the natural awkwardness of integrating into an established team. I told myself that once I proved my capabilities, once they saw my dedication, these initial hesitations would fade. My focus remained on the work, on demonstrating my value through tangible results. The first few days were a blur of onboarding documents, system logins, and introductions to various department heads. Everyone was busy, and I understood that. Yet, there was a consistent pattern. I was given tasks, but rarely invited to brainstorm sessions or informal coffee breaks where real connections were forged. I'd overhear discussions about upcoming projects, exciting new pitches, and client meetings, but my name was never mentioned in connection to them. It felt as though I was an auxiliary piece, a background character in a play where everyone else had a starring role. The energy I'd arrived with slowly began to wane under the weight of this quiet isolation. My desk was positioned at the edge of the main creative bullpen, a spot that felt both accessible and strangely peripheral. It was a constant reminder of my position as an observer rather than a full participant. I found myself listening more than speaking, trying to decipher the unspoken rules of this new professional landscape. I tried to initiate conversations, asking about projects or offering assistance, but my overtures were often met with brief, almost dismissive answers. It was as if my presence was acknowledged, but my input wasn't truly sought or valued. The polite smiles remained, but they rarely reached their eyes. Even simple things, like asking for clarification on a task, sometimes felt like an imposition. I noticed how easily my white colleagues could approach Marcus or other senior members, engaging in casual banter before diving into work-related discussions. For me, every interaction felt more formal, more guarded. I began to question if it was just my perception, if I was being overly sensitive. Perhaps this was just how things operated in a high-stakes agency. But a nagging feeling persisted, a quiet whisper that something deeper was at play, something that went beyond typical workplace dynamics. The agency prided itself on its diverse client base and inclusive campaigns, yet the internal reality felt different. I saw the vibrant, diverse faces in their marketing materials, but in the day-to-day interactions, I felt a distinct sense of being an outsider looking in, an anomaly rather than an integral part of the team. Despite these growing concerns, I pushed them down. My goal was clear: to excel, to make an undeniable impact. I knew I had the skills, the creativity, and the drive. I just needed the right opportunity to truly show them what I was capable of, to break through the invisible wall that seemed to surround me. The first few weeks solidified my initial observations. I was consistently overlooked in team meetings, my contributions often unheard or quickly glossed over. It was a subtle art of dismissal, where my voice simply didn't carry the same weight as others, even when I offered valuable insights. During brainstorming sessions, I would present an idea, articulate it clearly, and watch as it landed with a thud. Moments later, a male colleague, often Mark, would rephrase my exact suggestion, perhaps with a slight tweak, and suddenly it would be met with nods of approval and enthusiastic comments from Marcus. It was infuriating, yet I held my tongue. I learned to speak louder, to interject more forcefully, but it often felt like I was shouting into a void. There was a palpable difference in how my white colleagues were received. Their opinions were solicited, their ideas debated and developed, while mine were often simply acknowledged and then moved past. One afternoon, I proposed a fresh angle for a new client pitch, a concept that felt truly innovative and aligned perfectly with the client's brand. Marcus listened, nodded, and then quickly moved on to the next person, asking for more traditional approaches. Later that week, I saw elements of my idea subtly incorporated into another team member's presentation. It wasn't just the ideas, it was the microaggressions, the casual remarks that chipped away at my confidence. Comments about my articulate speech, as if it were a surprise, or questions about my background that felt less like genuine curiosity and more like an attempt to pigeonhole me. I felt constantly under a microscope, yet simultaneously invisible. My colleagues would often engage in lively discussions about their weekend plans, their favorite restaurants, or shared experiences that I simply wasn't privy to. I tried to find common ground, but the conversations would often shift or dwindle when I attempted to join, leaving me feeling isolated and awkward. I noticed how easily they formed alliances, how natural their collaborations seemed. When project teams were formed, I was often assigned to tasks that required independent work, or paired with someone who seemed equally disengaged, rather than being integrated into the core creative units. The feeling of being the black newcomer became a heavy label, one that seemed to precede me in every interaction. It wasn't explicitly stated, but it was implied in the way I was treated, the way I was perceived, or rather not perceived. My talent, my experience, seemed to be secondary to my identity. I began to question if I had made the right choice, if this dream agency was actually a gilded cage. The energy that had once excited me now felt draining, as I constantly navigated a landscape where I felt I had to work twice as hard to be seen, to be heard, to simply be acknowledged as an equal. Lunch breaks were particularly isolating. Groups would form organically, and I would often find myself eating alone at my desk, or making a quick trip out to avoid the awkwardness of trying to find a place at a table where I clearly wasn't expected. The camaraderie I had hoped for remained elusive. Even when I excelled at a task, delivering high-quality work ahead of schedule, the praise was often minimal, almost grudging. It was a stark contrast to the effusive compliments showered on others for similar achievements. It felt like my successes were expected, while theirs were celebrated. I started to observe the subtle body language, the averted gazes, the quick glances that seemed to convey a silent judgment. It was a constant reminder that I was different, that I didn't quite fit into the unspoken mold of what a Sterling and Finch employee was supposed to be. The agency's internal communications often highlighted their commitment to diversity and inclusion, showcasing smiling faces from various backgrounds. Yet, the lived reality within the office felt like a performance, a superficial veneer that masked a deeper, more insidious form of exclusion. Despite the emotional toll, a stubborn resolve began to solidify within me. I refused to let their preconceived notions define my worth or derail my career. This wasn't just about proving myself to them. It was about honoring my own journey, my own capabilities. I knew I had a unique perspective, a fresh approach that could genuinely benefit the agency. They might be looking past me now, but I was determined to create something so undeniably brilliant, so impactful, that they would have no choice but to see me, to acknowledge my presence and my power. Amidst the quiet battles, a new project emerged, the pitch for Veridian Tech, a cutting-edge startup looking to redefine the smart home market. This was a high-stakes account, one that could significantly boost Sterling and Finch's profile and revenue. The entire creative department was buzzing with ideas. Marcus announced that every team member was encouraged to submit their initial concepts for consideration. This was my chance, a genuine opportunity to showcase my strategic thinking and creative prowess without the immediate filter of a group dynamic. I saw it as my personal challenge, my proving ground. I dedicated every spare moment to Veridian Tech. I researched the market meticulously, delving into consumer psychology, emerging trends, and the competitive landscape. I wanted to understand not just what the client wanted, but what their audience truly needed, what would resonate deeply. My approach was unconventional, focusing on emotional connection rather than just technological features. I envisioned a campaign that highlighted the human element of smart homes, how they could enhance lives, foster connection, and simplify daily routines, rather than just being a collection of gadgets. I spent late nights at my desk, long after everyone else had left, sketching concepts, refining taglines, and building comprehensive mock-ups. The silence of the empty office became my sanctuary, a space where my ideas could flourish without the subtle pressures of being watched or judged. I leveraged my background in graphic design, creating stunning visuals that were both modern and deeply empathetic. The presentation wasn't just slides. It was a narrative, a journey designed to evoke feeling and inspire a new way of thinking about technology. I meticulously crafted every word, every image, every transition. My proposal wasn't just a pitch. It was a fully fleshed-out campaign, complete with market analysis, target audience segmentation, media placement strategies, and a detailed budget breakdown. It was comprehensive, innovative, and deeply personal. I knew the agency often favored more traditional, data-driven approaches, but I believed in the power of storytelling. My proposal aimed to bridge the gap between cold technology and warm human experience, a connection I felt was missing in the current market. I kept my work completely under wraps. I didn't discuss my ideas with colleagues, nor did I seek feedback from Marcus. Part of it was strategic, wanting to present a fully formed vision. The other part was a quiet defiance, a refusal to let their dismissive attitudes influence my creative process. My colleagues, meanwhile, were openly discussing their own concepts, bouncing ideas off each other, and seeking Marcus's informal approval. I observed their process, noting their reliance on established formulas, their safe, predictable approaches. It only strengthened my conviction in my own unique direction. I felt a quiet thrill as I pieced together the final elements of my proposal. It was more than just a project. It was a manifestation of my resilience, a testament to my belief in my own abilities despite the constant underestimation. This was my answer to every averted gaze, every ignored comment. The presentation was designed to be immersive, to draw the audience in and make them feel the impact of the Veridian Tech brand. I even created a short, compelling video concept, something I knew would stand out from typical slide decks. It was a risk, but one I was willing to take. I practiced my delivery tirelessly, ensuring every word was impactful, every pause intentional. I wanted my passion for the project to shine through, to convey the depth of my commitment and the strength of my vision. This was my moment to command attention. As the deadline approached, I felt a mix of nervous anticipation and quiet confidence. I had poured everything into this. It was a reflection of who I was as a professional, a creative, and a Black woman navigating a space that often tried to diminish her. They had looked past me, seen me as just the newcomer, but I was about to show them the full force of my talent. My proposal was not just a collection of ideas. It was a statement, a testament to the power of overlooked potential. The day for the internal pitch presentations for Veridian Tech was set, looming large on the calendar. A palpable tension filled the air, a mix of competitive energy and nervous anticipation. Everyone wanted a piece of this lucrative account, and the stakes were incredibly high. Marcus had scheduled individual 20-minute slots for each team member to present their concepts. He emphasized the importance of brevity, clarity, and innovation. This was the moment where months of ideation and hard work would either shine or fade into obscurity. I watched my colleagues, a mix of seasoned veterans and ambitious peers, fine-tuning their presentations. They exchanged nervous jokes, offered last-minute advice to one another, and shared snippets of their strategies. I remained on the periphery, a silent observer in their shared anxiety. No one asked me about my proposal. No one offered a word of encouragement or curiosity. It was as if my participation was an afterthought, a formality. I was just another name on the list, expected to present something adequate, nothing more. I overheard snippets of conversations where colleagues discussed their surefire ideas, their confidence bordering on arrogance. They spoke of safe bets and proven formulas, reinforcing the agency's traditional approach. It only strengthened my resolve to present something truly disruptive. My internal monologue was a whirlwind of self-doubt and fierce determination. Could I really pull this off? Would my unique approach be too radical for Sterling and Finch? Would they dismiss it simply because it came from me? These questions gnawed at me. Yet, beneath the anxiety, a quiet fire burned. I remembered every microaggression, every time I'd been overlooked, every instance where my voice had been muted. This proposal wasn't just for Veridian Tech, it was for every time I had been made to feel less than. I spent the night before the presentation reviewing every slide, every word, every nuance of my delivery. I visualized the room, the faces, the potential reactions. I wanted to be so prepared that nothing, not even their preconceived notions, could derail me. I chose my outfit carefully for the presentation day, a sharp, tailored suit that exuded confidence and professionalism. It was a small detail, but it was part of my mental preparation, a way to project the strength I felt building within me. Walking into the office that morning, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Colleagues were huddled, whispering last-minute adjustments. I walked past them, my head held high, a quiet resolve etched on my face. I was ready. Marcus, along with a few senior executives, would be judging the presentations. Their expressions were serious, their expectations high. I knew this was not just about winning the Veridian Tech account, but about proving my worth within the agency. I was scheduled to present mid-morning. As I waited my turn, I listened to the presentations before me. They were polished, professional, and largely predictable. They followed the established Sterling and Finch template, safe and uninspired. A part of me wondered if I should have played it safe too, if my bold approach was a mistake. But then I remember the title of my presentation, the core of my message, the human connection in a digital world. It was truly me. As the person before me finished, Marcus glanced at the schedule, then briefly at me. There was no encouraging smile, no nod of acknowledgement, just a curt "Simone, you're up." It was the same dismissive tone I had grown accustomed to. I took a deep breath, gathered my notes, and walked to the front of the room. They looked past me, as they always did, their expressions unreadable, perhaps already dismissing what I was about to say. But I knew better. I stood before them, a small group of senior executives in my immediate team, gathered around the conference table. The room was quiet, filled with the low hum of the projector. Their gazes were polite but distant, already anticipating the next presentation. Marcus gestured vaguely towards the screen. "All right, Simone, let's see what you've got for Veridian Tech." His tone was flat, almost perfunctory, as if he was merely ticking a box on his agenda. There was no real expectation in his voice. I took another deep breath, grounding myself. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice clear and steady, belying the tremor of nerves beneath. "My proposal for Veridian Tech is centered on a concept I call the human connection in a digital world." I clicked to my first slide, a striking image of a family laughing in a sunlit home, subtly integrated with smart technology. It was a stark departure from the tech-heavy, gadget-focused visuals my colleagues had presented. A few eyebrows subtly raised. I began to speak, outlining my market research, my insights into consumer behavior, and the emotional void I believe Veridian Tech could fill. I spoke of empathy, convenience, and the seamless integration of technology into everyday life, making it feel less like a machine and more like an intuitive partner. I presented my unique branding strategy, a departure from the cold, futuristic aesthetic common in the smart home industry. My vision was warm, inviting, and focused on the benefits of technology for fostering connection and well-being, rather than just efficiency. As I spoke, I noticed a few subtle shifts in the room. A couple of executives, who had initially been checking their phones, slowly looked up. Marcus, who had been leaning back, sat a little straighter in his chair, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. I moved to the creative concepts, showcasing mock-ups of advertisements, social media campaigns, and a user-friendly app interface. Each visual was designed to tell a story, to evoke a feeling, to make Veridian Tech relatable and aspirational. I explained my media placement strategy, targeting not just tech enthusiasts, but families, busy professionals, and even seniors, demonstrating a broader market appeal. My approach was holistic, considering every touchpoint where the brand could connect with its audience. Then, I introduced the short video concept I had developed. I believe a visual narrative can truly capture the essence of his campaign, I explained, and with a click, the screen came alive with a beautifully shot, emotionally resonant short film. The video depicted everyday moments. A child's first steps captured by a smart camera, a busy parent effortlessly managing their home, an elderly couple staying connected with family through smart devices. It was simple, powerful, and deeply moving. The room was utterly silent, captivated by the visuals and the accompanying gentle score. For the first time since I joined Sterling and Finch, I felt their full attention, not just their polite acknowledgement. The silence was different this time. It was engaged. When the video ended, the screen returned to my final slide, the Veridian Tech logo reimagined with a softer, more approachable aesthetic, accompanied by the tagline, Veridian Tech, connecting what matters. I concluded my presentation, reiterating the core message and the potential for Veridian Tech to become a household name by tapping into universal human desires. This isn't just about selling technology, I stated. It's about selling a better way of living, a more connected future. I finished speaking and looked at their faces. The initial, dismissive expressions were gone, replaced by a mixture of surprise, contemplation, and something akin to awe. They had looked past me, but my proposal had finally forced them to truly see. A moment of stunned silence hung in the air after I finished speaking. It felt like an eternity, yet it was only a few seconds. The quiet was profound, a stark contrast to the polite applause or quick comments that usually followed other presentations. Then, one of the senior executives, a woman named Eleanor, who rarely showed emotion, slowly leaned forward. "Simone," she said, her voice low, "that was unexpected. It wasn't a criticism, it was a genuine admission of surprise." Marcus, who had been impassive throughout, cleared his throat. "Simone, your approach is certainly unique." He paused, his gaze fixed on my final slide. "The video concept is particularly strong. Did you produce that yourself?" "Yes, Marcus," I replied, my voice steady. "I storyboard, directed, and oversaw the editing. It's a proof of concept for the emotional narrative I believe Veridian Tech needs." A ripple of murmurs went through the room. Another executive, Mr. Henderson, chimed in. "The market analysis is incredibly thorough. And the focus on human connection, it's a bold pivot from the usual tech-centric messaging. What was your inspiration for that?" I explained my rationale, drawing on my research and my personal belief in the power of authentic storytelling. I spoke with a newfound confidence, feeling the shift in the room, the palpable sense that I was finally being heard, truly heard. My colleagues, who had been sitting with expressions ranging from boredom to mild interest, now looked genuinely flustered. Their faces registered a mix of shock, envy, and dawning realization. The smug smiles were gone, replaced by uneasy glances. Mark, who had often rephrased my ideas, looked particularly pale. He had presented a very traditional, feature-heavy campaign, and my presentation had just blown it out of the water with its sheer originality and depth. Eleanor spoke again, her voice gaining strength. "Simone, your entire pitch, from the branding to the media strategy, feels incredibly cohesive. It's not just a collection of ideas, it's a fully realized vision. How long have you been working on this?" "Since the project was announced, Eleanor," I responded. "I wanted to ensure every element was meticulously crafted. I didn't mention the late nights, the quiet defiance, or the isolation that had fueled my singular focus." Marcus picked up my printed proposal, flipping through the pages with a newfound intensity. His earlier dismissive demeanor had completely vanished, replaced by a focused, almost scrutinizing attention. He was seeing me now, not just a name. The questions continued, more detailed, more engaged. They challenged my assumptions, probed my strategies, but I had an answer for everything. My preparation had been exhaustive, my conviction unwavering. I could feel the weight of their previous underestimation lifting, replaced by a growing respect. The air in the room had changed from one of polite indifference to genuine intellectual engagement. My proposal had not just surprised them, it had fundamentally shifted their perception. As the discussion wound down, Marcus looked at the other executives, then back at me. "Simone, this is truly impressive. We'll need some time to digest this, but you've certainly given us a lot to think about." It wasn't an immediate win, but it was a profound victory. Their faces, once so quick to look past me, now held a mixture of admiration and a hint of regret. My proposal had not just been good, it had been undeniable. The days following my presentation were a whirlwind of activity and a stark contrast to my initial weeks at Sterling and Finch. The quiet isolation I had grown accustomed to was shattered, replaced by a sudden, intense interest in my work and my presence. Eleanor, the senior executive, personally requested a follow-up meeting with me to delve deeper into my Veridian Tech proposal. Her questions were insightful, her feedback genuinely constructive, and her demeanor respectful. It was the first time I felt truly valued in a professional discussion at the agency. Marcus, my creative director, also started treating me differently. His curt instructions were replaced by collaborative discussions, his dismissive glances by direct eye contact. He even began to solicit my opinions in team meetings, something that had been virtually unheard of before. My colleagues, once aloof, now approached my desk with a newfound curiosity. They asked about my process, complimented specific elements of my presentation, and even offered to collaborate on future projects. The invisible wall had crumbled, replaced by tentative bridges. I noticed the subtle shifts in their body language. The averted gazes were gone. Now, when I spoke in meetings, heads turned and people listened. My ideas, once dismissed, were now given serious consideration, often sparking further discussion and development. The most satisfying change was the shift in how my ideas were received. No longer were they being rephrased by others. Instead, my name was explicitly attached to my concepts, and I was given credit where it was due. It was a small but significant validation. The agency's leadership was clearly impressed. Word had spread quickly about the groundbreaking Veridian Tech proposal. I was invited to high-level strategy sessions, introduced to key clients, and my opinion began to carry weight in important decisions. I still maintained a quiet dignity, not gloating or seeking revenge for past slights. My focus remained on the work, on demonstrating consistent excellence. I wanted to prove that my brilliance wasn't a fluke, but an inherent part of who I was. The shift was not just professional, it was social. Colleagues who had once ignored me now invited me to lunch, to after-work drinks, and even to informal team gatherings. The camaraderie that had once felt so elusive was finally becoming a reality. I learned that the Veridian Tech client had been particularly impressed by my proposal's unique focus on emotional connection. They saw it as a refreshing and necessary departure from the typical tech marketing, and it resonated deeply with their brand values. The agency officially adopted my human connection in a digital world concept for the Veridian Tech pitch. It was a massive win, not just for me, but for the principle that innovative ideas, regardless of their source, should be recognized and celebrated. I felt a profound sense of vindication, not in a vengeful way, but in a deeply satisfying one. I had faced the quiet prejudice, the subtle dismissal, and instead of shrinking, I had expanded, proving my worth through sheer talent and unwavering resolve. This experience taught me the power of self-belief, even when others failed to see your potential. It reinforced the idea that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come when you dare to be different, to challenge the status quo. The agency's perception of me had been completely redefined. I was no longer just the black newcomer. I was Simone, the visionary who had brought a fresh, impactful perspective to Sterling and Finch, a true asset to their creative force. My proposal had not only shocked everyone in that meeting, but it had also initiated a ripple effect, changing the dynamics of the entire department and paving the way for a truly inclusive and inspiring future for me within the agency. The Veridian Tech pitch was a resounding success. Sterling and Finch secured the account, largely due to the innovative direction of my proposal. The campaign launched to critical acclaim, significantly boosting Veridian Tech's market presence and solidifying Sterling and Finch's reputation for cutting-edge creativity. My role within the agency transformed dramatically. I was promoted to senior creative strategist, a newly created position that leveraged my unique blend of analytical and creative skills. I was leading major accounts, mentoring junior creatives, and my voice was now central to strategic decisions. The surprising twist, however, came during the celebratory dinner for the Veridian Tech win. Eleanor, the senior executive, raised a toast, not just to the team, but specifically to me. "Simone," she began, her eyes sparkling, "your vision for Veridian Tech wasn't just brilliant, it was deeply personal, wasn't it?" I looked at her, surprised. "What do you mean, Eleanor?" I asked, a hint of apprehension in my voice. I hadn't shared any personal details about my background with anyone at the agency, especially not about my family. Eleanor smiled warmly. "I did a little digging, Simone. Your mother, Dr. Anya Green, is a leading researcher in assistive technology for seniors, isn't she? And your father, Professor David Green, is a renowned expert in ethical AI development." A stunned silence fell over the table. My colleagues, who had been so quick to dismiss me as just the newcomer, now stared, their mouths slightly agape. Marcus looked particularly flustered, his face a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. "Your proposal for Veridian Tech, focusing on human connection and well-being through technology, suddenly makes perfect sense," Eleanor continued, addressing the room. "It wasn't just good marketing, it was informed by a lifetime of exposure to the very principles Veridian Tech aims to embody." I felt a surge of emotions, surprise, a touch of embarrassment, but mostly a profound sense of liberation. My parents, both brilliant academics, had always instilled in me the value of using technology for social good, a philosophy that had clearly permeated my work. "I didn't share my family's background because I wanted my work to speak for itself," I explained to the stunned faces around me. "I wanted to be judged purely on my merit, not on any perceived connections or advantages." The revelation redefined everything. My colleagues, who had looked past me, now saw not just a talented strategist, but someone with a deep, inherent understanding of the very industry we were trying to revolutionize. My newcomer status was replaced by a legacy of innovation. The surprise wasn't just for them, it was for me too. I hadn't realized how deeply my upbringing had shaped my professional vision until it was articulated by someone else. It was a powerful moment of self-discovery and external validation. From that day forward, the respect I commanded was undeniable. It wasn't just for my skills, but for the depth of my perspective and the quiet integrity with which I had navigated their initial dismissals. I was no longer just Simone. I was Simone Green, a force to be reckoned with. My journey at Sterling and Finch became a testament to the power of perseverance and the quiet strength of those who are underestimated. It proved that true talent and vision will always find a way to shine, even in the face of subtle prejudice. I learned that sometimes the most profound victories are not just about proving others wrong, but about fully embracing your own unique story and the rich experiences that shape your perspective. My proposal had shocked them, but the truth about my background had truly redefined everything.